Hello and welcome to Inside OUSD. I'm John Sasaki. In this show we'll help you learn more about the inner workings of the school district. We're going to talk about the district's budget with Chief Business Officer Lisa Grant-Dawson. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, John.
Before we start, I want our viewers to get to know you a little bit. Tell us about your life and what brought you to OUSD.
Well, my life prior to OUSD had been in school business. I went to Tuskegee University. And one of the things that I've learned, especially about this industry, is that governmental entities, to include school districts, do not come to recruitment fairs. So for business, marketing, accounting majors, we don't really realize that that's a source for a really robust career, especially when you want to support children and a community. Schools are ultimately the foundation for a community and its livelihood. And my family came to California because my parents went to Bishop College in Dallas, Texas, which is a historically black college university that doesn't exist anymore. But they were recruiting black teachers to come to Vallejo. Vallejo had reached this cresting point with diversity, and it still is one of the most diverse cities in the United States. And so with that, African American teachers, Filipino teachers, Latino and Latinx later teachers were all recruited to come to Vallejo.
Including your father? Including
my father. And my mother also found employment with the school district. 2002, when the district went under receivership, it was a moment, I think, of professional give back that I thought maybe I should go helped the district for a few years. I worked for Johnson & Johnson at the time. And so I thought this is a good professional give back moment. I've always been very service oriented, and so who knew that I would not only fall in love with it, but see such a different purpose professionally. The call to come to Oakland has come many times in my career. When this call came this last time, I will say my entire career has been spiritually led. I thought that I selected the districts in which I was in, but all of that, if I reflect back, was this is where you're supposed to be. I came to Oakland because there were relationships that said they have a need and we think the need is you.
Very good. Well, we appreciate you being here. All right, so let's dive right into the kind of the more challenging questions here. And the first, I want to talk about the fact that public school finance is different from, home budgets. It's different from even regular kind of business budgets. Why is school finance so difficult to understand?
So I would say the only difference and the major difference from a home budget is the resources that you receive all have a prescriptive of how you can use it. In a household, if you have multiple streams of income, those multiple streams of income, you can determine how you want to spend it in your household budget. But in a school budget, because those multiple streams have those different requirements, and again, prescriptive, that's what makes it challenging. You can use this resource for this, but not that. You can include it and pay for this, but not that. And so I have often told people that the magic in this industry is really literacy. And though most people laugh, truly, it's reading the language, understanding the parameters of the funding, because that's what makes you that strong stakeholder with the school board, superintendent, internal constituents, as well as stakeholders. Well, why can't we just pay for this with that? Because there's a caveat and a parameter. So that's really the only difference between having multiple streams of income personally and definitely with school district, the different streams and how we earn it. That's the other component. The differences of what makes you eligible for it can vary from your enrollment, your attendance, who do you serve, you applied for it, you didn't apply for it, it's a mandate, and you receive X amount of money just because we're requiring you to do the following things.
Very good. Based on your experience with school districts in general, you've been, what, now 3 school districts?
4.
4, okay, very good, including OUSD. Mm-hmm. And based on what you know about our budget, obviously you're deep in it all the time, considering all that, some people argue we don't have a budget crisis, which technically is true. We don't have a budget crisis right now, but we do kind of long-term have a budget crisis. Can you explain that?
I can. So if I can use the household budget example, on payday, most people don't have a budget crisis because their check was just deposited or they just deposited. By the afternoon, perhaps, or the end of the week, or 2 weeks later, after you've paid your expenses, your rent, your mortgage, your utilities, then the difference between what you received on payday and then what you have now, that can immediately create a budget crisis. Well, you actually had it before, right? Because your income or your income is not meeting your expense needs, or your expenses are actually too high, and it never will meet your income need. It's really the same with the school district, in that we have had and do have a budget crisis in the sense of how the district operates. I think that the way that we've adopted, different models and different programs based on need, what oftentimes I don't think is understood is, well, how much is that going to cost? It's a great thing, but how much is that going to cost? What is it going to require? So I think some of the things that we're teaching the entire district to do is, when we have an initiative that we want to move forward, your business and finance team and other stakeholders are your first and your last line of defense. We have to be at the table at the beginning to discuss that. So it's going to require this many positions, or what investment, what services are we going to need? Is this a long-term or a short-term investment? And then how do we balance that? And so I think what we've done is, the asks have been high, which they should be. We haven't often aligned that to not only what the initial funding would need to be, but how it grows over time. Because doing something at one school or one network can cascade to, we want to do it district-wide, but do we have the resources to do so? So again, it is still very similar. It's about scope, and it's about how we balance what resources we have. And what you can see in the district's finances is, okay, let's begin to apply for more grants or more resources so we can maintain it. And that becomes a crisis in and of itself, because our funding keeps fluctuating while we're trying to maintain programs.
In a nutshell, we have no crisis right now because we're meeting our bills right now, but down the road we will potentially have more bills, higher bills that we have to cover, and we still have kind of the same amount of money that we're getting, or even money that's going to be diminished.
Absolutely.
Because of what's going on with the economy and
Absolutely.
And loss of enrollment, things like that.
Absolutely. And because school districts, you're 85% of your budget is people. Mm-hmm. So with people and with the cost of employment, those costs rise. And so with that being said, the district has to afford not only the current salaries, but there are other components. We pay for a portion for our employees' retirement. And those rates change. The district does not have the negotiating, power, ability, or even introduction to be able to work through those things. So you have to always balance those pieces. And so with that, I think those things aren't always understood, that we not only take care of employees today, but tomorrow. And that tomorrow expense is quite high also.
Very good. All right, so when it comes to delivering on the 4 pillars of the strategic plan, we're talking creating strong readers, empowered graduates, joyful schools, and of course, the 4th pillar being diverse and stable staff. Why does our budget situation present such an obstacle to doing all those things?
Because of the, I would say, in looking at what the district has done, there have been so many initiatives and ways to do things. I'm not sure that over time we've balanced them based on what we earn. I also don't think one thing that we have really taught and spent a lot of time with the district and our stakeholders is about how we're funded, our base funding, and enrollment and attendance. The population in Oakland has changed. This is, charter school impact aside, it has changed. And with that, with high percentage of families and families with children, or individuals with children, that has shifted. And so with that, we earn less. but we still want to operate as if we still have the same amount of earning potential, and we don't. So again, back to a household budget, the moment, you know, you increase your cable package to include all the maxes that are available, what you used to spend perhaps in, you know, $110, you're now paying $250. That change in your health insurance changes and you're paying more and your net check is lower, you're not able to make up that differential between what you used to pay, right, with your cable bill to all of those different packages. And then you begin scaling back. That is the exact same thing that we have to do. And we have to prioritize the initiatives, because the other thing is we're trying to do a lot at one period of time with resources that, again, are not always as consistent throughout the time that we wish to do so. And so I think that's another big factor that we're all learning together, and how to balance that more efficiently.
Very good. What does having the number of schools we have do to us with regard to the amount of money that we spend? And, you know, why do some people, including the county and the state, say we have too many schools?
So they're saying we have too many schools, and here's a really good example. Again, just if it helps with just practical examples, the number of students has declined. So at one point in time, the number of schools that we had, there was a level of perpetuity to how many students were at an elementary school, a middle, or a high school. So as your population declines, if you are serving less, again, we're going to earn less. And so if you're adding more expenditures, because again, the district is saying, you know, we want community schools. We believe small class sizes adds to quality. We believe that having certain positions at every school or access to is important. All of those beliefs, goals, priorities, there's nothing about them that isn't sound. The question becomes, but can you afford it? Can you afford it, and how long? And the truth is, we haven't been able to afford it. We've been forcing ourselves to afford it, and that forcing has been, will erode and reduce these other things over here, a lot of them being our infrastructure. Are there other initiatives that we have reduced that we could have or should have? I can't speak to, but what I can say is that there is a distinct imbalance, which I speak to a lot about, whether it's in the support services within the district that we've reduced and or eliminated. But then the demand and the expectation continues to grow. Okay. And that imbalance is what also creates, let's add here, but then let's reduce here. And so eventually you get to this imbalance where if we don't have enough people to support all of the employees, if we don't have enough individuals to lead different initiatives, then we won't be able to meet the goals that the board and or superintendent establishes. So that's why the county is saying, and or other constituents, including myself, we've reached a place that we have too large of a footprint. And in many areas, we can't keep up. Our buildings and grounds cannot keep up with the wear and tear that not only has happened, but the district has also not funded many different areas so that we can continue that work ongoing. And so, like your house, if you don't take care of your roof year 1, 2, 3, by that 4th and 5th year, what would have cost you less is going to cost you more. And that is exactly the place that we find ourselves.
And that's, and this gets to my very last point, and that is, that's exactly why, you know, since 2017, we've had budget reductions, adjustments every year. Mm-hmm. And we can't really get away from that in our present state. Is that correct?
So we can, again, if we are looking at it from the front end. Each time we've done that, it's been a reaction to, we got to get to a number. I think that's the other thing that challenges us now, looking back, especially even from 2017, that some of the reductions we made did meet a financial number that we needed to meet. But we also see growth in other areas as well, using those same resources, which still says, continue to hold this rock. And matter of fact, we're going to pile on more, and we want you to hold it, you know, with less. What we are really advocating for is to balance that, because pulling back does not mean that you can't grow forward. It helps you to reset. It helps you to, you know, like a slingshot, pull back to be able to regird so that we can move forward, so that we can work on enrollment and attendance. When I arrived, there was a lot of conversations about enrollment. Let's increase enrollment. And that's one of the things that has changed in school business, because many districts that went under state receivership, one of the reasons why they went under the receivership is they were projecting more in enrollment, therefore more in attendance, and it didn't materialize. We had to focus on, let's look at attendance. And we also have to look at back to the number of schools. We are what I would call a choice district. Where you live, in other districts, neighborhood schools are fostered more heavily. In Oakland, they're still fostered, but there is still the option of choice of where you want to go, to school. So there are neighborhoods that have a percentage of students that live in the neighborhood. Their families have chosen for them to go to other schools, and it includes schools within OUSD. And so with that, we have to shift where we're serving our students. That's another reason why, again, back to some schools being so small, we can't provide quality instruction. For me, when I look back, when I was in elementary school, if my school was so small that we couldn't have a good kickball game, that's my metric of perhaps my school is just a little too small, because I liked kickball when I was growing up, and we wanted to play with multiple classrooms, to be able to have a really good kickball team.
Kickball being the metaphor for all the things that schools have to provide.
Exactly.
Yes, all right.
Exactly.
Lisa, thank you for sharing with us that perspective on the budget.
Yeah.
And thank you all for joining us. Tune in next time for another episode of Inside OUSD.